Now let's talk about circuits. Ohm's law, application of Ohm's law. All right.
Sure.
What are the things that you'd like to cover there?
Sure. The distribution of current there. So let's start there. In series connection, current is total there. It is equal in all the resistors that exist in that series connection. So if you have 3 resistors, all of them will have the same current.
Yeah.
And however, voltage will then be divided onto those resistors in series. I repeat, in series, voltage is divided. And then in parallel, current is the one then that is divided. So if we have multiple resistors in a parallel connection, current will be divided into those resistors according to their strength. So if a resistor has 4 ohms and the one has 8, then we see that the ratio there is 1:2, and the current will be distributed as such as well.
And keeping in mind that current is inversely, proportional in that case,
yes,
to that resistance. So which means that the bigger the resistance, the smaller the current.
Yes,
through it.
Definitely.
Yeah, very, very important.
Very important. And then voltage then stays the same in a parallel connection for both those resistors with different resistance. I think in a nutshell that is what we should be able to know for our application of Ohm's law.
Sure. I think what I do want to weigh in on, Mina, is just the understanding of EMF.
Sure.
Okay. When do we use that EMF and internal resistance is equals to I R plus small r, right?
Sure.
So remember, EMF is the EMF of the cell. It has to be specified that that's the EMF. When you also have the internal resistance, or when you are looking for the internal resistance as well. Now, the thing to remember is that the I there stands for the total current in the circuit. The R there stands for the external resistance. So it means if you've got a number of resistors that are there, you need to bundle them up into one. You need to get the total resistance in your external circuit, or what we call the external resistance, right?
Sure.
So that's important for the R value. And then I think one thing that I also want to give a warning about, there are those smaller questions at the end, usually where they would ask, they are sort of level 4 synthesis type questions, where they would say to you, let's say if a switch was open and it would eliminate one of the resistors or whatever the case is, or bulb bends out or whatever. So the first thing to look out for there is, please remember that the first thing to look at is what happens to your external resistance.
Yes.
That's the first thing.
Yep.
Whatever happens in your circuit, how will external resistance be affected? So if a bulb bends out and they were connected in parallel, that would increase the resistance of your circuit, right? So, and then subsequently, what happens? Current, therefore, decreases.
Yes.
Okay? So if resistance increases, current would decrease. And so you would then look at the other things, let's say the internal voltage. Now, what they often forget is to mention the constants, right? Mm-hmm. What remains constant? Mm-hmm. EMF remains constant. Internal resistance remains constant. So please mention that before you can get to your conclusion.
Sure.
All right. And I think in terms of Ohm's law, you'll be able to pick up quite some marks there. It is quite, you've said it quite well, just looking at, the circuit that you have, right?
Sure.
Now, quickly, let's move on to, maybe let's talk about quickly electrodynamics as well as electrostatics. What is there to look out for? Starting with electro.
Can I confess there?
Yeah.
You see, those topics, for me, I don't know for you, maybe you are great. For me, those are the topics that I would like to spend time on, to be like, yeah. You see, here. So I'd rather switch that question back to you to say, okay, since we have exhausted all approaches, at least your answer will be more rounded than mine.
Okay. So electrostatics, let's start with electrostatics. Knowing Coulomb's law, right? Electrostatic force between two objects, point charges, it's directly proportional to the product of the charges, inversely proportional to the square of that distance apart, right? Just knowing that first, knowing how to apply that. Now, remember that when you are substituting into the formula, you do not need to show the sign for the charge. What is important about the sign is whether you'll end up with a force of attraction, or if you are looking at the net force, right, the direction in which that particular point charge will be pulled or pushed towards, right? So if you had, let's say, two positive charges, right, you've got P and Q, right? If they are both positive, it means they are repelling each other, they are pushing each other away. Then you'd look at, let's say, if we look at P, so P would be moving in that direction. It's because of Q.
Yes.
Right? So that's important. Okay? Another very important thing is to look at net field. Right? So if you've got two or more charges and you've given a point, now that's important.
Sure.
The assumption is that at the point that we're looking at, you assume that there is a positive test charge. And a test charge is usually imaginary, and you imagine, in a sense, that that point charge is the one that's going to be moving.
Okay.
Right? So let's say I've got a positive here, I've got a negative there, and we've got a point in between. So we assume that that point is positively charged. So what will happen? It will be attracted by the negative charge, it will be repelled by the positive charge. So which means the net field at that point, let's say that point is X, right? One, you'll have E1, which is because of the negative charge. You'll have E2 because it's being pushed by the positive charge. So which means the net field between those will be in that direction. And both E1 and E2 we will add together because they're in the same direction.
Sure.
But if E1, let's say you've got positive and positive, or let's say negative and negative, and you've got a point charge in between, it's being pulled by the one, and it's being pulled in the other direction. So the net in this case will be the difference between the two. So that is quite important for the net field. Okay. What else to consider? I think those are the things. Yeah. Perhaps if they're looking for the net, it's always wise to draw a vector diagram, right? So that you can be able to tell what's happening there.
Sure.
I think I want us to really move towards a conclusion now. Electrodynamics is really not such a big issue, right? You have to know the difference between DC and AC, right? A generator. With the motor, you'll have a battery there, right? So I saw a question one time when they were asking, how can you change? They had given a generator and they said, how can you change this into a motor, right? So it means you would need to connect it. Instead of connecting it to a device like a bulb, you'd have to connect that to a battery, right? To change it into a motor. So very important to know the right-hand rule, right? So for a generator, you use the right-hand rule, right? For a motor, you'd use the left hand, right? To know that this shows you direction of motion. So if you are rotating, right, you know direction of motion is upwards. Let's say if it's rotating clockwise, so that would be upwards. This guy shows us the direction of the field. It's always north to south, right, of your magnet. And then the second finger shows us in this direction, the direction of the current. Okay, so that is also quite important. Now, calculations on the average, P average is I RMS, V RMS times I RMS. You must know how to convert from a maximum to RMS. You must know how to convert, in this case, from RMS to maximum as well. So please just know all of those. Usually they are just straightforward, right?
Yeah.
Remember, when you are given power, always assume that's average power, okay? Unless it is specified that it is maximum power. I've never seen it before.
Yes.
But it is possible. It is possible, yeah. And please keep in mind that P average, right, is P max divided by 2.
Sure.
That's where our RMS comes
yes.
from. Yeah, but
Yes.
I won't delve too much into that. That's P max divided by 2, okay? Or you can say half of P max, okay? And then finally, I think we want to conclude with this.
Yes.
The last section, which is the photoelectric effect, right? Really straightforward as well. We need to know what the photoelectric effect is. We need to know the definitions of what the work function is, the threshold frequency, minimum frequency required to emit electrons on a metal surface, right? Minimum energy required. That's the work function. Secondly, now remember, guys, that when you've got energy of a photon, E is equal to HF. That is Einstein's equation, right? HF, right? That's the photon. The work function, so E is equal to the work function plus the kinetic energy. So when your energy of a photon is greater than the work function, then electrons will be emitted.
Yes.
Now, I remember when they ask about the speed of the electron, remember that the mass of the electron is given.
Yes.
Okay? It's at the back of your book. It's 9.11 times 10 to the power minus 31 kilograms, right?
Yeah.
So please keep in mind that is what you substitute for the mass of the electron. Okay?
Yes.
Right. And then finally, guys, and I want to say this. Yeah.
Before, so when it is mentioned that at maximum wavelength,
Yes. Oh no. Yeah.
maximum wavelength, I think it is also important that we know that at maximum wavelength we have minimum frequency.
There we go.
Then
There we
tell
go.
us that
The threshold
is the
frequency.
threshold
Yeah.
frequency.
Oh, that is
So
very
that-
important.
That statement, I've seen it by Zisa a lot of Abashaka. So maximum wavelength, that is minimum frequency, which is the
That's a
threshold.
very good point. That's a very good point. I wanted to get to the last part. Usually that's theory, where they are asking about how will intensity or how will
yes.
the brightness of the light affect the movement of the electrons. So remember, guys, that when we talk about the brightness, it doesn't affect the speed of the electrons, but what it does affect is the number of electrons that are emitted per second, right? So it will increase photocurrent, but the speed or the maximum speed of the electrons still remains the same.
Yes.
And then what does change the kinetic energy of the electrons is if I change the frequency of the light. That is, the light changes to a different frequency. A higher frequency would therefore increase the kinetic energy of the photoelectrons, right? And I think that is paper 1 in a nutshell. For me, I really do say, guys, your low-hanging fruit there, your definitions,
Yes.
okay? Just know what goes where. To those of you that may still be experiencing some problems, as we said, we will be having our masterclass. Choose the masterclass that you'd like for the topic that you would like, and we'll go through, we'll take you through. You can even submit questions that you'd like for us to go through. That's important. But I think that brings us really to the end of our physical science paper 1, the love of my life, okay? And we'll be coming back again to you with paper 2 on the next one. Please, guys, be consistent. Make sure that you put in the work on your end. and just make sure that you can watch the videos that we've already compiled for you, right? And if you can attend the master classes, we've made them really affordable for you as well. But I think that brings us to the end, Mr. Booty. Oh. All right, guys. We'll see you again next time from us.
It's
Sharp, sharp.